Korea's latest satellite is now successfully orbiting the Earth after being launched from a base in Russia this morning. Officials say the satellite should be making its first contact with Korea's ground station in about an hour from now. Kim Min-ji tells us more.
The Korea Aerospace Research Institute said the Korea Multipurpose Satellite 3A established radio contact with the satellite station in Antarctica at 7:40 a.m. Seoul time, about 30 minutes after its launch. It later made contact with the second ground station, and all of its solar panels have been deployed to generate power. In about an hour, the satellite is expected to initiate contact with Korea's own ground station. The satellite, also known as Arirang 3A, was launched just past 7 a.m. Korea time from Russia's Yasny launch base. It was sent into space on the Dnepr, a Russian rocket converted from a Soviet-era intercontinental ballistic missile. The launch comes as Korea is attempting to make inroads into the global space industry. Particularly, Korea's satellite development is ramping up, while the country is planning to develop its own launch vehicle for testing by 2019. Korean officials hope the satellite will boost the country's ability to monitor the Earth's surface and complement the nation's 3 other multi-purpose satellites currently in space. The 1,100-ton satellite has the most powerful optical lens of any Korean satellite yet. It can provide clear images of any object larger than 50 centimeters in diameter on the Earth's surface. It's also equipped with an infrared sensor that can monitor volcanic movements or forest fires. The Arirang 3A will circle the Earth 15 times a day for the next 4 years. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, despite the government's aggressive stimulus measures and rate cuts by the central bank, Korea's consumer confidence continues to remain sluggish. The Consumer Sentiment Index dropped this month with no signs of inflation moving back to the central bank's target band. Hwang Ji-ae has the details.
Korean consumers' inflation expectations for the next 1 year came in at a record low of 2.5%. It also marked a 0.1 percentage point drop from a month ago, as policymakers see expected inflation as a window into future inflation. Forecasts are growing that the central bank is going to fall short of its inflation target band of 2.5% to 3.5%. The slumping expectations for prices to increase come after the central bank cut its key rate 3 times over the last 8 months as a means to prop up ailing domestic consumption and revitalize the economy. And despite such efforts, there are no signs of improving consumer sentiment either. Consumer sentiment has been on an upward trend this year, but that came to an early end in March. The Bank of Korea's Consumer Sentiment Index came in at 101 this month, down 2 points from February. The central bank attributes the drop to the sluggish pace of recovery and the weakening prospects of income from interest due to the record low key rate of 1.75%. A reading above 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
The Korean government has laid out its vision of how it plans to transform the nation over the next 5 years into a creative economy and a global ICT leader. More than $8 billion has been earmarked to foster creative talents, support startups, and add an extra sparkle to Koreans' favorite TV shows. Our Song Ji-son reports.
Creative Korea led by ICT. That's the key slogan in a new roadmap from Korea's Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning. The plan, dubbed K-ICT Strategies, lays out a vision for 2020. The government will inject $8.2 billion over the next 5 years, looking for a market expansion of 8% compared to the current 6% growth. Government officials hope exports will top $210 billion in 2020, up from the current $174 billion. Among the key projects unveiled Wednesday, Seoul aims to demonstrate 5G technologies at the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games ahead of its commercial launch in 2020. Korea also expects to become the first to launch terrestrial UHD television services that same year. Korea is already taking the lead in semiconductors, display panels, and smartphones, and Seoul seeks to secure the top spot for the next 2 to 3 decades by supporting innovation and convergence. The set of measures follows the ministry's restructuring announced earlier this month. The moves were made to better adapt to the fast development of the ICT industries and to take prompt actions to achieve its initiatives in President Park's creative economy drive. 송지선, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this Thursday lunchtime. For that, we connect to Eunice Kim at the News Center.
Eunice, in a few hours' time, search teams will begin their second full day of surveying the remote crash site of Germanwings Flight 9525 in the French Alps.
That's right, Mark. Investigators will once again brave difficult weather conditions and mountain terrain to search for clues and also identify remains of the 150 people who were on board. This as the first of the two black boxes retrieved, the cockpit voice recorder reportedly holds some shocking data on the final moments leading up to that devastating crash. Our Kwon So-ah has the story.
Some valuable data has been retrieved from one of the two black boxes on the ill-fated Germanwings plane. The cockpit voice recorder was found a few hours after Tuesday's crash.
It is damaged, but it is possible to reconstruct the black box in order to examine it in the coming hours and determine a number of details about this catastrophe.
Early reports say that the retrieved recording suggests that one of the two pilots may have been locked out of the cockpit in the lead-up to the devastating crash. The New York Times has an unnamed source from the investigation saying you can hear one pilot lightly knocking, then hitting the door more aggressively, trying to smash it down. What's known so far is that the plane did not descend suddenly. It was drastically but consistently falling. However, authorities say it could take weeks or even months for full results, as the precise timing for all the sounds and words has not yet been deciphered. The casing of the second black box has been found, but not the recording device itself. Meanwhile, Germanwings is supporting the families of the deceased as they promise to take them as close to the crash site as possible. A counseling unit has also been set up. On Wednesday, local time, leaders of the three most affected countries, French President François Hollande, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy paid their respects to the victims at the search headquarters. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
On to other news now. Saudi Arabia has launched an aerial campaign against Houthi rebel targets in Yemen, including those in the capital of Sana'a, backed by a coalition of over 10 countries. That is according to the kingdom's ambassador to the United States, who explained from Washington Wednesday that the operation was meant to protect and defend the legitimate government of Yemeni President Abed Rabo Mansour Hadi, who has been on the run from fighters allied with the Houthis. Al Jazeera is reporting 3 Houthi military commanders were killed in that military operation. Ambassador Adel Al-Jubeir said the early morning campaign came after a close consultation with allies, including the U.S., which he said was not participating in the airstrikes. There were conflicting reports on the whereabouts of Yemen's President Hadi, who now has a $100,000 bounty on his head. Hadi's foreign minister rejected reports that the 69-year-old leader had left Yemen by boat as Shiite fighters advanced into the southern port city of Aden, where he was believed to be. The fighters captured Hadi's defense minister and seized Aden's airbase, making big gains in the south of the country, also overrun by an influential branch of Al-Qaeda to the east. And finally, the European Union has its eyes on normalizing relations with Cuba. EU's foreign policy chief Federica Mogherini in Havana on Tuesday met with Cuban President Raul Castro and Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez. She said both sides agreed to reach normalization agreement by the end of this year and intensify negotiations to reach that end, while also discussing human rights concerns. Mogherini also called on Washington to end its embargo on Havana. The U.S. and Cuba have been pushing to restore diplomatic relations after more than 50 years of hostilities.
Thank you to Eunice there for the international news. Now, this year marks the 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule. To remember the efforts made to win back the country's sovereignty, a traditional song close to the hearts of Koreans has been reenacted.
And this performance was held at one of the first modern buildings built during the Korean Empire inside Deoksugung Palace. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the story.
This traditional Korean folk song called Monggumpo Taryong expresses the hopes and dreams of lovers who await to be reunited. It's being sung at the very palace where it was originally performed for Korea's Emperor Kim Kojong during the late 19th century.
We decided to play Monggumpo Taryong because it's one of the most representative traditional folk songs beloved by Koreans.
It's an honor to be able to play this song in this palace. I feel a sense of pride and I'm touched to be in a place that symbolizes modern Korean history.
The Deoksugung Seokjojeon Palace stands out from other historical structures in Korea. Kim Kojong commissioned British engineer John Harding to build his empire's first Western-style building with elements of neoclassical architecture in mind. After it was completed in 1910, the king often escaped there to stay grounded in times of emotional hardship and crisis.
With the death of his queen, King Kojong returned to this Deoksugung Seokjojeon Palace with a plan to establish a new political system to secure national sovereignty from rising foreign imperialistic powers.
As part of efforts to reinvent the country and secure sovereignty against Japanese colonization in the early 1900s, Kim Kojong renamed his empire Taehan, and to this day the country is commonly referred to as Daehanmin국 in Korean. To mark the 70th anniversary of the country's liberation from Japanese colonization, songs representing Korea's past and present will be performed once a month at this historical palace through August. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We've got a typical spring day ahead with lots of sunshine. From a single-digit morning low, the afternoon is warming up with highs getting into mid to upper teens across the nation. But dryness continues. A dry weather warning has been in place here in Seoul for 3 consecutive days now, and many areas in the country are also suffering from a lack of humidity. So combined with wide temperature gaps, these dry conditions can lead to colds as the cold and flu activity level is high to very high across much of the country. So dress accordingly, drink plenty of water, and take good care of your health. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will be 15 and Daegu and Gwangju rise to 19 and 18, while Busan climbs up to 16 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 15 and 17, while Dokdo rises to 14. It seems like pleasant spring weather will continue for the time being, so I hope you get to make the best of this nice weather conditions. But that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, as far as I'm aware, That must be from last year, because I'm led to believe the cherry blossoms are appearing in like mid-April. So you might have to wait a few more weeks if you want to see those, but they really are beautiful. Those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us again at the same time on Friday. Have a great day. Bye-bye.